Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Kubeir. I'm a CICC licensed immigration consultant, and I do this because I love it. Love it because, if you ever needed excitement, if you ever needed uh, dollops of stress, if you ever needed dollops of anxiety, a lot of people fancy that. People like me, silly people like me. Well, then Canadian immigration is the place to be. Why? Because so much of it happens. I mean, sometimes you wake up in the morning not knowing which direction are we going to go today, and every single morning it's like a roller coaster. You suddenly, when you think you've taken the dip, and the next one is around the corner, and then there's another high. Or sometimes, I don't know if you guys play Minesweeper kind of a games, then it also feels like Minesweeper on some days, where you have to tread carefully on these eggshells. You do not know which one's going to crack when, which one's going to blow up in your face when. And so therefore, forgive my excitement about this whole thing. I know a lot of you do not share the same excitement as I do with this whole thing, and that's rightfully so, because you're not in the same position that as I am, and vice versa. So my job is to still gather all of this, package it, and try to break it down for you in as simplest a way as possible, so that you are then able to navigate yourself, and therefore you hopefully do not get blown up by any of these so-called landmines in this Minesweeper game. However, there are some good things that happen. There are some bad things. When I'm saying bad, again, it's a matter of perspective, right? Bad for you, good for somebody else. Bad for somebody else, good for you, kind of a thing. For example, category-based draws, and so many people look at it and say, well, this is bad because so many highly skilled candidates are left behind, whereas francophones get selected. Francophones, they don't care, right? They are getting invited. You might think that they are not the ones who should get selected, but government doesn't care, and they don't care, and therefore it doesn't matter. And similarly, skilled trades, similarly healthcare. So it's something works for them, something works for you, kind of a situation. You have high points, but you still do not get invited. Puts you in a bit of a tough spot there. So yes, what we're going to talk about today is all about Canadian immigration news and updates, as it has been rolling. And this week has been another week full of challenges, yes, to a bit, and we'll talk about that as well. Again, changes. Surprise, the week started quite well, and we were all super duper excited with a Monday surprise express entry draw. Didn't expect that one, but it happened. I mean, yes, we expected draws for express entry this week. Didn't expect a Monday draw. And then followed by a Tuesday draw. And I said, okay, this looks like going to be a bumper jackpot. Not to be. Actually turned out to be a damn squib from there on. But it did build on to our excitement. And then came the changes for the LMIAs, then came the changes for the visitor to work permit being stopped. Also, the RNIP is closing today. If you did not know that already, tomorrow is the 1st of September. International students can look forward to the 24-hour per week as it is confirmed later on earlier this year. And what else is happening? There is also some changes on the PNP sides. Again, New Brunswick closed their program, which you already know about. Hard to fill skills pilot from Saskatchewan closed. British Columbia introduced their new guidelines for their international postgraduate stream, which is to be launched next year. So many things to digest in one day, but it continues to happen. So without further ado, let's get cracking with what we have in terms of the updates. This is the Canadian Immigration Weekly Roundup. So topics of discussion, as usual, PNPs and updates. Of course, we will talk about express entry. Of course, we will talk about category-based draws. I mean, that is the most exciting bit anyways, right? So PNP draws, starting with New Brunswick. New Brunswick has announced that it would stop issuing ITAs under the New Brunswick express entry program. This we already know by now. This happened last week. According to the province, it has already used its full allocation of ITAs for candidates in this stream. Of course, they do not make their allocation public, so we don't really know what was that number that they managed to fill. But just so that you know, express entry for New Brunswick is closed. Their skilled worker was the ITAs they had closed earlier in the year anyways. Saskatchewan, hard to find skills pilots is permanently closed effective August of 30th. And where did it say that? Yeah, it's said here. On their website, SINP said, effective 30th of August, the hard to skills fill, bit of a mouthful, that one. Hard to fill skills pilot will be permanently closed. Any remaining applications that have been submitted with a valid candidate specific job approval letter will be honored and processed to completion. This is usually the most important, most frequently asked question. Hey, I already submitted. What happens to me? Oh, yes, I am going to be submitting. What happens to me? And so in your cases, there is also that link for closure Q&As. So by all means, please head over to Saskatchewan's website and take a look at those question and answers that they have posted there. In most cases, it's just saying that they have tried to streamline this program whereby they consider this to be a duplication. I don't think it's a duplication, but hey, of course, they are the ones who decide that this is a duplication of their programs. Therefore, they would like to close it. Actually, it's a bit of a duplication on terms of they have another program, which is Saskatchewan's skilled worker with work permit in Saskatchewan. I don't remember exactly what it's called, but it's that program whereby you need to have work experience in Saskatchewan already for 6 months. You need to have a job approval letter. And hard to find skills pilot was hard to find. Hard to fill skills pilot was also in a similar fashion. So of course they have closed it down. A lot of programs, if you notice, have been closing down in different provinces. Not only for, so this one is closed. This is end. This actually was also one of the programs that was being really, really misused and abused, if you want to know it, right? So now you know this. So Saskatchewan has been smart to clamp it down before it caused any more damage. I don't know if you want to call that, but that's what happened with this one. Let's keep moving forward. So this was Saskatchewan. Okay, let's talk about Express Entry. Always the exciting aspect. Monday draw was PNP only. So whenever there is a PNP draw, obviously our anticipation is very high that the following draw or the continued draw in that particular week, hopefully, or that series would be either CEC or category draws. This time it was again a CEC. So thankfully, CEC has now been a bit consistent, and that's pretty cool. Consistent draws is all we all like. Consistent draws, it sort of gives us some hope, some understanding of what to expect, where to go, what to anticipate, what can happen, right? It's the uncertainty which kills us all with anxiety. But this one, again, thankfully, IRCC, as I said, has been consistent with the draws. So this time they invited 1,121 candidates in the PNP draw, which is for people who still are newbies on this platform or who do not understand this a lot. Provincial nominee program only draw basically means you have already received a nomination from the province and they have added 600 points to your Express Entry profile scores, and therefore you are now sitting with a score of 600-ish plus. And therefore, those were the candidates who were invited. 694 was the score. Again, people who keep wondering, how can somebody score 694? Well, for those people, you have to understand that a lot of people are indeed eligible under the job offer streams from different provinces. Some might be linked to Express Entry. For example, New Brunswick Express Entry, right? There's no point system, specifically to invite people from. And Prince Edward Island also has an Express Entry stream. Again, no points-based system in terms of whether they would be eligible under the skilled worker program, like federal skilled worker, like 67 points or not. So they can have very small total on the CRS score, very small number. If you remember, in 2021, there was this Express Entry draw, the very famous Express Entry draw, where 27,000 plus people were invited with a score of 75. So you can imagine people, of course, can have 94 kind of a score. So that's the draw for the PNP. And then followed immediately the next day on Tuesday draw was the Canadian Experience class in Express Entry. 3,300 people were invited. They seem to now have hit a sweet spot with 3,000-ish number, 3,300, 3,200 kind of a number. And score was 507. I think this is the first time we saw that a low score in a very long time, 507. At one point of time, 500s by itself was quite high. 507 finally has hit. Since the beginning of this year, I was saying and hoping and praying and speculating that the scores, all 500s, should get cleared out. And then obviously IRCC decided to prove me wrong, and by insisting that no, we will keep the scores above 500 only. With this dwindling down now, slowly coming down to the 500s. I'm hoping that 500s indeed do clear out. Now, again, there will always be people who will say, well, can they clear out? Can they not clear out? So for you guys, let's take a look at the express entry pool, right? 27th of August, that's the express entry pool breakdown of 127 in the 601. 127, of course, we can ignore them because those are the people who will get their invitations anyways because they have received their PNP invitations, their PNP nominations. Now, 501 to 600, 9,764. That's the number, 9,764. Now, this pool breakdown is before the draw. After the draw, 3,300, if you subtract from, bit of a mouthful I'm having to do. So if you subtract 3,300, you will then, as you all know, you're all math geniuses anyways, 6,464 is what you would be left with. 6,400-ish is the number that we have now. It is absolutely possible that IRCC can do just one or two draws and clear all the 500s out. It's absolutely possible. Because I know in a lot of your questions, you will keep asking the same thing. Is 500 a possibility? 504 a possibility? 503 a possibility? First of all, I don't know because I have absolutely no insider news as far as IRCC is concerned in terms of what kind of draws are happening and when they will conduct a draw. But I certainly can be hopeful, and I am hopeful. And I'm saying that even now, my fingers are crossed that all 500s will or should get cleared out within this year itself. 9,764 was this. So 6,000 is what we're sitting at, about 6,400. Now, the problem here is that each 2 weeks or every single day or within this gap of this bi-weekly draws that we are witnessing right now, there are obviously people who keep entering the pool, right? They will either upgrade their scores, they will improve their scores, they will be completing their 1 year of work experience or second year of work experience, they will be improving their English language results or adding French to the component, or simply having completed their Canadian masters or Canadian diplomas will now be entering the pool. Well, all of these guys, as and how they keep jumping into the pool, that number is replenished, and you will have more people who will enter into the pool or get added to the pool. So that number 9,764, though it was before the draw, can very easily come back to the same number or similar number or a number close by in a span of 2 weeks. So fingers crossed and hoping that not too many people get excited and jump into the pool so that we can see a lower draw. Now, there's a big chunk of people who are gathered at the scores of 503, 504, 505. And the reason I know it is just with the sheer number of people who keep asking about that score. So from here on, depending on the number of invitations, the point drop could be significantly lower. Again, also depends on how many people get replenished into the pool. But for the first time, it's actually looking possible. It's actually feeling possible that yes, 500s could definitely see the day of the day. That's a possibility. That at least it's feeling more hopeful. So there you go. That's the pool breakdown. Anything below 500, I know there are 490s as well, and then there are 480s. 480s, of course, I would say, guys, you need to do something with your score at this point of time. 490s, lower 490s, again, you guys need to do something with your score. High 490s, depending on which point of 490 you are sitting at or higher point of 490 you're sitting at. 499 possible, 498 also far stretch possible. Anything lower, I would say do something with your scores. Okay, but again, that's just me saying based on what IRCC has been doing for this whole 8 months of this year, and again the number of people who keep adding into the pool. So yeah, do something with your scores because that is so much more better than IRCC doing something with the scores. In the other news, and this is where the things about changes and updates come into place, Canada ends the visitor to work permit policy. Now, you see what happened during this is very funny, and let's talk about this because this is really shaking the net right now. During COVID, there were so many people who were in Canada who were stuck because the airlines were not operating or the countries had put a ban or restrictions into people who could enter the country, and therefore Canada thought that in the best interest of people who are already in Canada, why don't we allow them to apply for work permits if, of course, they were able to get a job offer. Now, the thing is that though they have said it very clearly who were eligible, the agents, the unscrupulous agents everywhere in the world saw this as a brilliant opportunity for selling visit visa packages to Canada. So what they started saying is that go to Canada on a visit visa and get a work permit. Why? Because hey, Canada's website is saying so. And of course, the notification that came out didn't really clarify about the job offer, just said that if you wanted to apply from inside Canada, visitors could do that. And that obviously created a lot of, you know, as you would say, a lot of uptake for such kind of programs. A lot of people sign up, people paying in lakhs in India in some cases. And of course, when they arrived in Canada, then they realized they were being duped, they were being scammed, because there is no such way that they can land in Canada and get a work permit. That process, nobody told them that they still need to get an LMIA, they still need to have a job offer, and then they would have to apply for a work permit. And therefore a lot of situations were a lot of issues were happening there. Also, IRCC realized that a lot of people were using this as a backdoor entry to come to Canada, in the sense like they were not visitors, they didn't intend to visit Canada for visit purposes. I mean, since when did Canada come onto the tourism map of the world, right? We are not Thailand after all. The weather here is not 12 months a year, which is going to be inviting and having you here. So very soon they realized that this was being misused. But even when they realized it was being misused, what did they do? That they extended the policy by another 2 years. So initially, when they announced in COVID, that policy was valid for 2 years, and then they came out and they extended that policy for another 2 years, and that policy was supposed to end in February of 2025. But as you can imagine, currently Liberal government, which is a coalition with the NDP, is currently facing a lot of flack within Canada itself. Of course, so much of negative anti-immigration sentiment, so much of they're basically being pushed down for all different reasons, including immigration, large part with immigration, and therefore they've been taking a lot of steps trying to identify ways and means of making those big announcements to show that they are doing something. So what they did is, that's a policy which was supposed to end in February, which was like 4 or 5 months later. They said, okay, effective immediately, visitors in Canada can no longer apply for work permits online. So that's the whole thing, right? So they make this big announcement, but actually they forget to tell everybody that most people who are coming to Canada on a visit were not applying online anyways. What they were doing is they were flag polling, because there is a section of the law which allows you, if you are inside Canada on a valid status, you can go to the US through the land border, take a U-turn, come back. Even if you don't have a US visa, you can do this, because US will simply refuse your entry. You will take a U-turn, you will come back to the Canadian side, and because you are in Canada with a valid status and you've been returned back and you are now presenting yourself at the Canadian port of entry, you are now exempt from the requirement that you needed to apply only online. You could actually now apply at the port of entry, and you would then have a LMIA, and you would then be able to make a application for work permit. And this is what most people were doing. The only people who were applying online, were the ones who had something to hide. Because when you come to the port of entry and you are flag polling, then you are subjecting yourself to an interview, because this is no longer an application where somebody is just reviewing your documents and making a decision. Now you have an officer in front of you who's asking you very valid questions, asking you questions about your education, about your work experience, about your language skills, about your job offer. How did you get it? Where did you get it? You came to Canada as a visitor. How come you're applying for a job? How soon did you arrive in Canada, and how soon are you applying? All these questions basically meant that a lot of people were then facing issues. They were not able to answer the questions correctly. They were sometimes getting caught, and they were then being, I wouldn't say deported, but they were being issued removal orders to leave Canada. So the only people who were applying online were the ones who basically were afraid of these questions or knew that they had something to hide. Anyway, so Canada has now clamped down on this policy. You can no longer apply for it online, but flag polling, that loophole still remains open. That door is open. So I do not know what did Liberals achieve by doing this. What policy did they change? What exactly? Again, for me, it feels like it's just a headline announcement. Not that it makes a big difference, because for people who can do it, they will be able to continue doing it. But for the time being, it made for a bit of a headline. So there you go. That's the first big announcement that was made. So for a lot of people who are saying that flag polling was closed down earlier, that flag polling has never been closed down. Flag polling was restricted, so you can no longer apply for postgraduate work permits at the border. You can no longer flagpole for postgraduate work permits. It was being realized that a lot of international students, after completing their studies, would go to the border to get a work permit because they wanted it sooner, and it was creating a lot of stress, a lot of strain on the CBSE officers because they have other things to do, right? This is not their job. They are doing it as a secondary duty, but they were facing a lot of strain, and hence the postgraduate work permits were the only application types that were closed down. All other regular applications which were earlier being accepted at the port of entry still continued, and therefore this one continues. Then this one is another one, rural and northern immigration pilot program to close today, not now closed. Hey, it's still open today. So for people who are still submitting their applications today, you can still do it before 8 p.m. Is it 8 p.m.? What is the UTC time zone today? Hold on. UTC time. I keep forgetting. Is it 5 hours ahead or 4 hours ahead? They are 4 hours ahead. So until 8 p.m. until 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you will still be able to submit your applications under the RNIP, Rural Northern Immigration Pilot Program, after which this program will now be closed. Now, mind you, this was a pilot program. Pilot basically means an experimental program. It runs for a period of time. It has a validity period, which was supposed to actually end earlier, but they extended it until 31st of August. And once this has been completed, they will then relaunch this program as a permanent program. Same thing happened with AIPP. It was Atlantic Immigration Pilot Program, then it became Atlantic Immigration Program. This will become Rural Northern Immigration Program. That's it. There will be no PP. It is one P. And this Rural Northern Immigration Program apparently has been quite successful. A lot of communities, cities have been able to retain a lot of people. At least that's what the data and statistics says. I won't be too excited about those numbers, but that's what it says. And apparently they are going to come back with a newer format of this program. I'm not sure what will the changes be. That we have to wait and watch. It is anticipated that RNIP will relaunch in a month or so, probably fall. Well, effectively fall starts September. So let's see how soon this one will start. But as of right now, today, RNIP will close as of 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time Zone. Okay, so please take care of that one. This is another big one. And a lot of people are very, very, very confused. Now let's talk about LMIAs. Now LMIAs, also my favorite subject. LMIAs has been getting a lot of flack, okay, for the wrong reasons and the right reasons. I wouldn't get into that, but everybody sees that this has been the vehicle on which a lot of people have been unscrupulously or fraudulently getting their permanent residence. Yes and no. Yes, because yes, and no, because hey, no. There are lots of people who actually can score more than 500 without having to resort to an LMI. So no, not everybody. Of course, there are people who do it. A lot of employers have used this. A lot of agents have used this. Lots of candidates have used this. So you see, what happens is when you blame the employers, when you blame the agents, why don't you blame the candidates? Now they say candidates are willing to buy them because agents are selling them, but then it's the other way around. The reason why agents are selling them is because people are willing to pay a price for it. If you as an applicant, as a candidate, stop paying for it, very soon nobody will be willing to sell it, right? If you do not have to pay for it, then nobody will sell it. So it's as they say, right? You clap with two hands. Therefore, I would say that there are bad apples on both sides of the thing. Anyways, so LMIAs obviously has been getting a lot of flack, and as far as LMIAs are concerned, where did it go? Here. As of 26th of September, so basically about in a month's time, Canada will no longer process low-wage LMIAs, especially in those census metropolitan areas, CMAs, where the unemployment rate for that occupation is more than 6%. That is the first and a very big issue, one of foremost and a big aspect. They also said the high-wage LMIAs, after they sort of implement this and they give it a look for about 3 months, then after that they will also start looking at the high wage LMIs. Now, first of all, differentiation between low wage and high wage LMIs. low wage LMIAs and a high wage LMIAs. Both of them are eligible for 50 points or 200 points. So high wage will obviously have 200 points, cannot be with the low wage, but they're both eligible for points in express entry, provided they're under tier category 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's the points basis. Secondly, both of them can be eligible for work permit depending on which kind of a work permit, which kind of an LMIA it is. So if it was only a PR supporting LMIA, which is only for high wage LMIA, that basically means you can only get points for it, 50 or 200. If it is a dual intent LMIA, which can be for a high wage or a low wage LMIA, then you can get points for it if it was tier 0, 1, 2, 3. And of course, you can also apply for a work permit, closed work permit, using that LMIA within the validity period of that LMIA. So as you already know, now the LMIAs are being issued with a validity of 6 months. Within this 6 months period, you will have to make an application for either the work permit, or if you're eligible, then for your PR application and claim those points within the 6 months. So your application, you have to be invited and you have to submit your application. You have to get your AOR before the expiry of 6 months. Now, if the LMIA is expiring and you haven't received your ITA, and you may not receive your ITA, or you may not be able to submit your ITA, then you have to be able to have, you would have had submitted your work permit application, you would have received your work permit application, so you have a valid work permit. And as long as that work permit is valid for the next 2 years or 3 years or whatever the case might be, you can continue to claim your points for your LMIA until that work permit is valid. So the law says that the day your work permit, so the day your submit your application and the day the visa is issued, your work permit remains valid. So as long as that work permit is valid, even on the day the visa is issued, then you would continue to get your 50 points or 200 points, as may be the case. I hope this gives you a bit of a gist here. Now, the high wage and the low wage LMIA, the difference here is that the low wage LMIAs are the LMIAs for which the wages that are being offered are below the median wage for the province. Now, for people who know about LMIAs and all these things, especially even the applicants and candidates, you would know that there is a median wage for the job. There is a median wage for the region, whichever region you are. For example, in Ontario, you could be in the Toronto region, you could be the Waterloo region, you could be in a different region of Ontario itself. Each of these regions will also have a median wage. The province by itself has a median wage. Of course, the occupation by itself, the job also has a median wage. Now, the low wage LMIA is when your wages being offered are below the low wage, below the median wage for the province. So Ontario's median wage, I forgot what is the Ontario's median wage. Hold on. Things that we keep looking at all the time and yet we forget. Hold on, let me share this screen. Where is my window? Oh, where is my window? There you go. I hope you can see this. Let me make this bigger. Yes. So this is the Ontario's median wage. Ontario says $27 as before April 2nd, and as of 2nd of April, it's 28.39. So if your LMIA application is with the wages below 28.39 as the wages, then your application will be for a low wage LMIA. If your application is 28.39 and above, then you would be a high wage LMIA. I hope that explains in terms of what the high wage and a low wage LMIA is. And ESDC will now stop accepting or processing low wage LMIAs, the ones which are below 28.39 for Ontario and similarly for other provinces, where the unemployment rate for those census metropolitan areas rate is 6% or more. Also, the work permit that will be given to you would be only 1 year. Okay, and that is also another issue. And as I said, 90 days into this whole process, they will also start looking at the other applications, that is the other high wage LMIAs as well. That's it. That's basically all I had for you for today. There are other small changes as well. Now, as far as what I said earlier about the international students being able to work 24 hours a week. Now, that was the announcement made earlier this year, where it said that by fall, the international students, earlier you used to work full time. Then they said for the remainder period of the year, after April, you could only work 20 hours a week. And now that we are in fall, then the new policy of 24 hours a week would be implemented. Nothing has come to reinforce this policy. It was only announced earlier, and after that, Nothing further has been indicated. So I'm going to assume that fall should start with your 24 hours per week, and you should be able to start working 24 hours per week starting fall, your fall semester. And keep in mind that you can only work if you are studying as an international student. If you're not studying, you cannot work. So please bear that in mind. And that's pretty much what I have for the changes. Have I missed anything? If I have, please, because I keep missing those. Okay, let's take one more here before I keep going. Somebody says, please talk about categories. I'm not sure what you want me to talk about categories. We all know that there are 6 categories in Express Entry now. You have the Francophones, you have the trade, the skilled trade, the healthcare, the STEM, the agriculture, the transport. What did I miss? Right? Those are the 6. And those are the categories. Nothing has changed there. In my opinion, the draws for categories will continue. I don't see any reason why the draws will not continue. Yes, I mean, the thing is, everybody expects that the draw should happen all the time and that the draw should happen repeatedly, frequently. That has never been said. Even the breakdown of the categories as to how many invitations, percentage of the invitations they will issue, we got that through the ATIP notes. So we have that information as to what IRCC had decided internally. They never announced that these are the number of invitations they will issue, or this is the percentage of the invitations they will issue. So it was their internal matter, which we got access to based on the ATIP notes that we shared earlier. And also bear in mind that these numbers, these percentages, these are all internal policy matters, and they're always subject to change. They can always go back and say, hey, we are inviting too many of these, let's cut down on this. Or at this point of time, we don't need too many of these categories, this particular category, cut down on this number. Or we haven't invited too many of these, or we seem to be needing more of these, let's bump this number up. So that variance is always going to be there. So as much as we would all want to hope that they follow that percentage, and I'm talking to you guys, STEM categories, that you're all expecting about 30% of invitations to go for STEM. If it doesn't happen, that is only because the total number of ITAs being issued, which approximately will range about 110,000, which happened last year, they are calculating 30% of all of that. So if 30% of 110,000, roughly 35,000 people have been the STEM categories, whether they were invited through the category draws or whether they came through the regular draws, it doesn't matter. As far as they got their STEM categories from the Express Entry draws, that's what matters to them. At least that is what has happened in the past as well. So I'm going to assume that's what they're looking at. So again, when you say please talk about categories, I'm not sure what exactly you want me to talk about. The categories will continue. Of course, as we move into the future, next year, there might be changes to the categories that I don't know. That we will only know once we get access to some new information through the ATIP notes or through the access to information privacy notes, or if IRCC comes out and makes some announcements. As of right now, the categories remain the same. They will, in my opinion, they will continue to invite. Just don't expect them to be inviting them every week, every month kind of a thing. It will happen based on the numbers that they have already established. I'm sure somewhere in their own internal policies, they already have a schedule of how many invitations they will be issuing, how many times they will be conducting a draw, how frequently. It's just that we don't know when that will happen. That's the first thing. Now, another thing I do want to talk about, and that is, where did this one go? Yeah, what I do want to talk about is in fall. Sorry, I keep saying fall. In end of October, 31st of October. Is it the 31st of October? Yes, 31st of October or the 1st of November. That is usually when IRCC, or rather when Immigration Minister will announce the immigration levels plan for the following years to come, right? So for the last few years, as you know, that they've been announcing multi-year immigration levels plan. So for this year, 500,000, and then the next year, 500,000, and those kind of numbers have been announced earlier. Will they continue? As of right now, there are all indications that I don't think that the numbers will be at 500,000. They will be reduced. That's all the indications moving forward. There was also talks earlier, if you remember, that they're launching a new program for tier categories 4 and 5. Now, tier categories 4 and 5, when the program will be launched, and if it is launched this year, taking away from the targets of this year, then it's going to be very difficult. But again, if a program is launched this year, I don't think it will take away targets from this year. It will probably take away from the targets of next year, simply because for this year, we are already in the month of August. They just don't have enough time to launch a program, invite the people, have them apply for it, and then process it all within this year. Not going to happen. So it will all be against 2025 targets. So if 2025 targets, which is let's say 500,000 people, I anticipate that number is going to be reduced probably by approximately 8 to 10%. That's what I'm thinking. Could be more, but 8 to 10% is what I'm looking at. So that 500,000 could very easily be reduced to 450. That 450 will all be okay. Sorry. Yes, thank you for reminding me about that one. I'll come back to this. So that 450,000 will be spread out over different categories of immigration streams. But can they reduce the family class, which is spouses and parents and grandparents? I don't think so, because that is the vote bank, right? That is where the people who will be voting for them will come from. So I don't think they will be messing around with those. Will they be messing around with the refugees and the protected person? Maybe a little bit, teeny bit. But in my opinion, the biggest impact will come on the economic immigration. And if that is where the impact will come, and then they are planning to launch this new tier 4, tier 5 pathway, where will those numbers be fitted? Again, it has to be economic immigration. So can you see the impact? The impact will be probably a reduction in some place for the PNPs and for federal high skilled. So as much as each year, so COVID, federal high skilled number was 110,000, then it was reduced, and then it was reduced because they had to take away into account TR to PR. And then finally next year, we were going to see full number again for federal high skilled. Now it seems like that number is again going to get reduced, and you will now see some other categories creeping in as well. So that would basically mean more pressure on the economic immigration numbers. And if you are still on the fence, then you have to be aware by now that it's going to get very, very, very difficult. And I'm not trying to create fear, but I'm just trying to make you aware, and you be aware that this is not going to be easy as we move forward. So if you have any chance of adding work experience, which is a priority occupation, then that probably could be your best way in to the whole process. So understand that, be aware, and always course correct depending on how the changes are happening. So that was one thing. And of course, yes, where did this one go? Thank you, Yadraj. I had actually missed out on this particular change, which also happened. Work permit extension policy under PNP. So what has IRCC announced now? IRCC has now announced. Actually, they made the announcement, I think, on the 27th of August, but this was effective 11th of August. So I do not know why, if they have to make it 11th of August, why don't they announce it later on? So what happened is, if you remember, in the month of May, I think it was 7th or 8th of May, they after lots of protests by the international students in Manitoba, those who had already made their applications, who were waiting, whose work permits were expiring, but their PNP processes were on, and Mark Miller had come out and said that we would give extensions to about 6,000 international students whose postgraduate work permits were expiring if their PNPs were in process. And it was only for Manitoba. And then Mark Miller had said that we are also willing to consider if any other provinces approach them with the similar numbers or was able to justify it to them. And that's what Mark Miller said. I do not know of any other province who went out to them and said, okay, we also need it or not. But on the 27th of August, they finally announced that they are now going to be extending work permits for those individuals who have an employment offer, who have a support letter from the province, and whose work permits are either valid or have been valid or have expired after the 7th of May. So even if your work permit expired after the 7th of May, but you have a supporting letter, you would still be eligible and you would be able to apply for a work permit extension. And this is until 31st of December, provided you have a PNP support letter. Now, I know a lot of you were saying, how is it different? Already, PNPs are providing support letters. Well, even I was confused at how is it different. But when I obviously dug deeper, then I realized this was meant for Manitoba. And for Manitoba's, individuals who had already made their applications, who are waiting. Now, you see, you can only apply for extension if you receive a support letter and if you receive a nomination. But because Manitoba had got this special provision, therefore Manitoba, it is at their discretion if they issue a support letter even for people whose applications are under process. So for example, their processing is taking between 8 to 12 months right now for their nomination process. So if they have realized that they have done the basic checks and they are satisfied that the person will eventually be given nomination, then they can extend out a letter to them. Similarly, I think Alberta also announced a similar policy. Let me just see if I can pull that up. Alberta also made a similar announcements, and they said that I can pull it up. Give me one moment, please, guys. Share screen. There you go. This one was the Alberta update, which also said that they would also be giving supporting letters for the Alberta Opportunity Stream and Rural Renewal Stream nominee applications may be eligible to receive a letter of support to seek a maximum of 2-year open work permit. Now, this is where it becomes very interesting. You see, Alberta Opportunity Stream is a employer-driven stream. Rural Renewal Stream is an employer-driven stream, which basically means you have to have a job offer. And therefore, in most cases, the nominations that you get are usually restricted to that employer. And even if you were to apply for a work permit, it would be restricted to that employer. But this is the big change where they're saying that you will be able to get an open work permit. This is where it makes it very, very interesting. And they were waiting for a final decision for their application as of 26th. So means even if they haven't received the final decision, but their work permit has expired or were expiring after the 7th of May and 31st of December, then if the province chooses, now this is where it becomes very important. If the province chooses, then the province will determine their eligibility and send them the PNP support letter. And based on that, they will then be able to apply for an open work permit. That is the key phrase here, open work permit. All the other earlier PNP support letters were always for a closed work permit. This is for an open work permit. That's where it is big. And that's where the biggest change is. So far, only 2 provinces have announced that they will be able to support this, Manitoba and Alberta. We have written to Ontario, and several of you guys have also written to Ontario. And Ontario has said that we, at this point of time, have no plans to be issuing any support letters. They only issue support letters to the expression of interest-based PNP streams. So your masters, no, even for masters, they don't. They only issue the work permit support letters for the employer-driven stream. So you have the employer job offer stream, the in-demand skills stream, and the international student stream. So if you are getting your nomination under these streams, then Ontario will issue you a work permit supporting letter, because none of these streams will be eligible to get a bridge open work permit, right? So therefore, because they are employer-driven, and therefore they will be able to get a closed work permit, which is based under the exemption code Tango T13, and the employer has to pay a compliance fee of $230. So this is basically the new change which happened as far as the work permit policy is concerned, and that's how it is rolling. Once again, guys, if you are here and if you want to obviously always be in the know of what's happening with Canadian immigration, then my recommendation is to please subscribe to the channel, because I would love to see those numbers go up. It's always very motivating. It also helps me keep coming back when the numbers are going up. It's a numbers thing, right? We all like that. But yes, do subscribe to the channel and hit on that icon, which is, what is that icon? Bell icon. Why? Because then when we conduct these live streams, you get notified, you will be able to join, and you will be able to take advantage of all this information that we have to share. Of course, we are also there on Instagram, Facebook, and all these platforms. Now, somebody said, okay, one more, right? Let's go this one. You missed the BCPNP considering changes of degree related. Actually, we didn't miss. We have already announced that long back that British Columbia is making the changes. They have now announced, they have now published their guide. I have their guide. Let me see if I can pull that up. Where is that guide? I thought I had that guide. I can't seem to find it. So British Columbia, for people who are interested, British Columbia has issued the guide for the international postgraduate workers. And if you are that person, then please go take a look at the British Columbia website. They have now announced those changes. Let me see if I can pull that up. Just give me one. I should be able to do that. This is what happens when you're not really ready for that, right? Yeah, I have it here. Open Sesame. Okay, I have it here. Present screen, share screen. Which screen am I sharing? Okay, I have it here. So this is the British Columbia's guide that they have issued. This is the additional information on skills immigration stream changes for recent graduates. So please take a look at it. As of 25th of, as of January 2025, they will be launching this new, as far as the changes are concerned, for the international postgraduate stream. And it will impact the current international graduate and the international postgraduate streams, and they will now be replaced by 3 new streams: bachelor's, master's, and doctorate streams. And they are saying that the final expressions of final invitations for these international graduate stream will be issued in November 2024. That way you will be able to submit your application as per the old stream in time. And the new stream, applications to the international postgraduate stream, will be accepted only until 9 a.m. 7th of January. So please take note of all of this. If you are eligible, if you are looking to apply under the postgraduate streams in British Columbia, all these dates are very, very important. And as they said, the new bachelor's and master's program will accept in registrations second week of January, and the doctorate stream will open for direct applications second week of January 2025. So important information in terms of who would be eligible and what do you need. Please take a look at this new guide that they have issued on the British Columbia website, and you will be able to take advantage of this. So obviously the big change is with regards to the job offer requirements. Now you need a job offer for a bachelor's degree. You need if you have completed bachelor's degree in BC, if you have completed master's degree in BC earlier, if you had completed masters from certain universities and certain streams, you didn't need anything. You didn't need a job offer. You could apply for your nomination directly. Now you will need a job offer. You will need a job offer for a period of at least 1 year if you're applying under the master stream. For bachelor stream, it will be for an indeterminate period. And for the doctoral stream, you don't need a job offer. So those are the changes they have made. Please take a look at it. Please be aware and be ready to make your applications once you are all done. And yeah, from next year, those changes comes into place. Thank you, Akash. Appreciate that. Please advise on overtime payment. Well, you should receive overtime payment if you are working overtime. That is not a problem. Hold. All right, so there you go. Let's get on with the questions and see who's got what to say. Okay, first one is Sapan Sabarwal. Worked with an employer on NOC 62020 for 6 months and got PR supporting LMIA from them. Currently working in STEM. Can they raise any issues? I am not sure what issues can they raise. Well, if you were working for that employer and you got a PR supporting LMIA from them, then so I'm not really sure what you are talking about in terms of issues. You are currently working in STEM 62020. In my opinion, I don't think that's a STEM NOC code. So if you are on a closed work permit, or are you on an open work permit? So having an LMIA and having a closed work permit are two different things. Absolutely do not impact each other. So if you have an LMIA, of course, you can also apply for a closed work permit, but you are getting 50 points for the purpose that you have an LMIA, you have a job offer, and therefore what you are currently working as will not make will not have a direct impact or any issues in your application if that's what you're asking. So if you're in an open work permit working under NOC 62020, or sorry, you're in an open work permit and you're currently working in STEM, but you also have a PR supporting LMIA, from a different employer and they are willing to support your application, then it's not a problem. You can continue with that. Sorry about that. Nothing here, Pravit. I have submitted EEAPR and got AOR recently. I'm in India. Now I want to attach an additional docs to my file in web form. How do I know the processing visa office? How to get that information? Well, in this case, if you do not know the processing office, simply choose Inside Canada. They will still link your application, your document to your application. And if you really want to know which visa office is handling your application, simply raise a web form and ask which visa office is handling your application, or you can also call IRCC and request them for that information. Pavit, sorry about that, nothing here. Tejbir says, which draw I will be eligible for, CEC or general, if I have 2 years of continuous food supervisor experience? Case 2, if I have 2 years of non-continuous experience. I don't know what you're trying to refer here, but if you are eligible in CEC, that always takes precedence, that always has a priority. So system will automatically make you eligible in CEC if you have 1 year of Canadian work experience within the last 3 years. And that's what matters, in the sense like if you were eligible under the federal skilled worker and if you were eligible under the Canadian experience class will always have a priority. So if you have 1 year of work experience within the last 3 years in Canada in a valid knock code tier 0, 1, 2, 3, even if it was not continuous, even if it's continuous, even if it is non-continuous, it doesn't matter. Even if it is 2 different employers, it doesn't matter. As long as the system identifies that you have 1 year of work experience in Canada under a valid knock code, it would give you that CEC class. Danny says, after receiving the PNP nomination approval, can I remove my spouse's foreign work experience from my EE profile since her employer paid her salary in cash? Well, just because her employer paid her salary in cash, you don't need to remove the work experience. You can still leave it there and just simply provide whatever documentation you have. It's not a problem. But if you're asking me for whatever the other reasons might be to remove that work experience, yes, you can remove it from the work history. And instead, you will have to mention it in the personal history. Please always disclose all the information correctly. If you are skipping anything from the work or education history, please mention it in the personal history as long as it is within the last 10 years. I got my UAE police clearance report in 2018 and I did not go back to UAE after that. Can I use it for my PR? Well, if you received your UAE police clearance after you had left UAE, then you may still be able to use it. But 2018 was a long time back, and I would recommend that you obtain a more recent one in such cases. Current residence is Canada. After the issuance of my PCC from India, not visited India, how long PCC is valid? PCC will expire next month. Well, you already know that it will expire next month, so you already know how long it is valid for, right? So the point is, if your current country is Canada, when you say after issuance of my PCC, were you in India? That is what matters. So if you are in India, then the PCC was not valid because your PCC, if it is from any other country which is not your country of residence, then it has to be valid for at least, so basically it has to be issued while you are outside that country, and it should include the entire duration of stay. That is what matters. So if you had obtained that PCC from outside India and you did not visit India, then it will continue to be valid until your next visit. Please just add a cover letter stating that you did not visit the country again, and therefore that PCC may be considered as valid. Do you need to provide proof of fund for PNP class draw in express entry? Eligible under CEC class, but EE says invited under PNP. PNP approved for HCP CEC stream. Well, even for a PNP class draw, you still need to be eligible under one of the federal streams. So it's either federal skilled worker or Canadian experience class or the federal skilled trade category. And if you are eligible under the Canadian experience class, then simply upload a document stating that you are eligible under the Canadian experience class and therefore you are exempt from proof of funds. I'm on postgraduate work permit. I lost my full-time job last month. I also don't have any job offer. Can my wife still apply for SOWP? Can you verify official website? Well, for official website, please refer to the IRCC website. That is the only official website. The requirement for a spouse open work permit, if you are a worker in Canada, is that you are currently working. Currently is the main keyword here, and that you provide your employment documents and your 3 most recent pay stubs. As I said, the verification, you please refer to IRCC website. You will find that information on there. Can I use 3-month-old employer form for OINB foreign worker streams? Yes, 3 months old should not be a problem as long as there has been no further changes on it. No question today from Malika Patel. Fingers crossed for upcoming CEC draw. Just want to thank you for doing this every week. Is very informative. Keeps hopes up. Well, trust me, I enjoy doing it every single week. It gives me a lot of motivation. I mean, also there is a bit of a hidden agenda there because it also ensures that I stay up to date, right? I mean, if I am not up to date, then I obviously can't do this. And therefore, it also pushes me on making sure I remain up to date. So thank you. Thank you so much for that note. I appreciate it. Is it necessary to submit a 6-month bank statement as proof of salary? I have a reference letter, T4 pay stubs. Can I use this for proof of EE profile? If you are in Canada and for your Canadian experience class, you are not required to provide your bank statements for proof of salary. For proof of salary in Canada, you need to provide your pay stubs, your T4s, and your notice of assessment. In some cases, if IRCC has a doubt that though you have a pay stub, were you really receiving a salary, then they can always ask you for your bank statements, but you don't need to provide it upfront. What document should I submit to BCPNP after my recent salary hike, as I expect to receive an invite in the next week's draw? Well, provide your most recent pay stubs, provide your letter that you have from your employer stating that they have increased your salary. That probably would do just fine. And of course, your employer would also provide you with the employment offer letter, and hopefully that would also indicate your salary. Sorry, Singh, nothing there. I got a knock B job, rec, under, I don't know what you mean by rec, but under 62100, employer is ready to give reference letter after 1 year. Which docs are required to apply under CEC for EE post 1 year of work? Well, for your express entry, you need to prove your work experience. You need to prove 3 things in your work experience. First of all, the period of work. From which date to which date were you working, and how many hours per week were you working? Because that is what establishes whether you were working for 1 year full time or not. Second thing you need to provide is whether it was paid employment. So you will need to provide your pay stubs, T4s, notice of assessment, and of course, if your employment letter can also mention what your salary was and your hours per wage, your per hour wages or monthly or whatever that might be. And third and most important is your knock code. So your employment reference letter need not mention your knock code, but must absolutely include your job roles and responsibilities, which in then will match with the knock code that you will choose for your work experience. This is what makes that work experience documents complete. I've submitted biometrics for PR on July, planning to visit India. What are my options if I don't get a decision before leaving? When is it safe to leave Canada during the process? Well, it is safe to leave Canada whenever you wish to leave Canada. There's no problem with that. You're planning to visit India for 5 months. Well, good luck. Enjoy your travel. The only issue over here is that if you don't get your decision before you travel, then you will have to inform them that you are traveling whenever you do get your portal request, and they will then hold your application until you return back. So that's the only thing that is going to go wrong here. So that's what happens if you don't get your decision on time. They will simply hold your application. You'll have to tell them when you're returning back, and they will hold the final processing of your application until you return back to Canada. I mean, you can always ask them to process it outside Canada. In that case, they can then send you a passport request, but then it can take longer. And there is no timeline as to how much time it will take. So then they can give you a passport request. You can then send your passport to the VFS or visa office, get it stamped, and then come to Canada and land as a permanent resident. New work permit temporary policy says support letter outlining placement in EOI pool, not work permit support letter issued to prove nominee. Please clarify the criteria. Well, this letter is being issued by the provinces, so Manitoba and Alberta. So if they have identified that your application is currently in process or it's even in the pool, it is their discretion. It's their decision. In some cases, though it says outlining placement in the EOI pool, it would actually be for people who have already submitted their application. So it could also mean people who are in the EOI pool as of 7th of May, because this policy is mainly meant to cover those individuals from Manitoba for whom this public policy was decided or was made in the first place. But this criteria, you don't have to worry about the criteria. If you are in the EOI pool, if you have an application in process, you don't have to do anything. It will be the province who will be sending out the letter to you, and using that letter and using your employment letter and hopefully your work permit, you would be able to apply for extension. Got ITA in CEC. Should I include my merit-based salary increase in the reference letter or state my current salary? Well, you could mention both. You could say that the salary started at this level and then eventually was increased to the current level of whatever that might be that you are drawing as of now. I'm expecting COPR in mid-September. I will finish cohabitation with my girlfriend for 1 year on 1st of November. Can I sponsor her as common law in November? Yes, you can. If you're completing your common law period, whenever you are completing your common law period, and at that point of time you are already a permanent resident, then yes, you can absolutely sponsor your partner under the common law as a common law partner. I did 2-year diploma in India. During second year, also did a full-time job for which I got points. Is it a problem as I was working at the same time of studies? Should I put this in personal history? Do I need any LOE or CC? Absolutely, it's not a problem working while studying outside Canada. I'm just pulling up some information for you. So there is no problem at all if you are working outside Canada, and I'm assuming this is outside Canada because it doesn't say here. It say here? No, it says in India, right? So because you were in India, you were studying in India, you were working in India, as far as IRCC is concerned, working and studying outside Canada is not a problem. You can claim points for your studies as well as your work. You don't need to provide any LOEs, etc. But it says CEC, so I'm not sure what you're referring to over there. So as long as your 2-year diploma that you did in India and you were working while you were studying in India, there is no problem at all. There is no issues. You want to show it in personal history, show it in personal history. But if you're claiming points for it, you can. There is no problem. My title matches a few job responsibilities, but I don't see them in the NOC title list. Any clarity? Yes, big clarity. Don't match job title. That is the clarity. Never ever match the job title. That's not the way to identify your NOC code or to determine your NOC code. The way to determine your NOC code is by matching job roles and responsibilities. For example, you can be called quality engineer, you can be called testing engineer, you can be called software engineer, you can be called quality technician, you can be called quality analyst, you can be called quality specialist. All these are different titles, but your job roles and responsibilities for all these 5-6 different titles that I just named could be the same, and therefore the NOC code will be the same. So please do not try to look for your job title. There are more than 180 countries in the world. Each country, each company has a different way of mapping their employees under different titles, under different duties. So always please match your NOC code based on the job roles and responsibilities, job duties, not as per the title. Okay, hope that helps. On ICT with wrong NOC since 2021, NOC corrected with work permit amendment. Am I eligible for OINP, EGO, FSW? Yes, you are, because your employer will give you a letter stating your job roles and responsibilities, and that is what will matter. And of course, now you have a new work permit as well. So what matters is what your employer gives you in writing in terms of what your job roles and responsibilities were for your OINP, EGO, FWS. I didn't enter my freelance work experience when I applied for closed work permit. How can I add it while applying for EE? I have proof of payments and contract. Well, then the first question is, why didn't you enter it? Because the application is quite simple and straightforward. It asks you to list down all your employment periods. Well, you can still show it, but it is always going to be up for IRCC to question it as to why didn't you disclose it earlier. If you want to add it, it's entirely up to you. It's your discretion. It's your risk to take. But be aware that IRCC can always come back and ask you, why didn't you disclose it earlier? Though it wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have been material in that case. But therefore, we always say, always, disclose all the information correctly in all your applications. I got SINP nomination already and work permit support letter. Employer not ready for LMIA exempt T13. Can I extend work permit under the new policy? No, you can't. And the reason for that is you will need the support letter from the province stating you are eligible to apply for the open work permit. And in this case, your work permit support letter is under the exemption code T13, which basically means your employer will have to pay the $230 compliance fee and upload the information and the job duties on the employer portal and give you the screenshot of that fee payment made so that you can get that number, a number, so you can complete your application. And that is what you will need to do. What are the steps after correspondence letter? Does this mean approval? When to expect P1 or P2 access? I do not know which correspondence letter are you talking about. Yeah, I'm not sure which correspondence letter are you talking about. I haven't, yeah. And if you're talking about P1, P2, obviously you're talking about PR applications, but which correspondence letter are you talking about? So yeah, please, you have to clarify that for me because it doesn't mean approval for sure. The only time it means approval is when it says you are approved or we are finalizing your application. That's when it means approval. Anything other than that is not approval. Can we know your prediction on the next CEC cutoff? Well, my prediction is that there will be a next CEC draw. I don't know when, and I do not know how many invitations will be invited, and I do not know what scores will that be. I'm just hoping it's a lower score. That's all. Whatever is the lower score, I'm happy with that. EOI created for Manitoba, didn't receive a draw yet. Work permit expiring on August 6. Am I eligible? In my opinion, possibly not, because that policy was announced on the 7th of May, and therefore they may be considering only those people who are already there in the pool as of 7th of May. But you can always check with the province and request them to see if they will be able to give you the letter. My course has 160 hours of co-op semester. Can I do more than 160 hours? And can I work for same employer part-time during co-op? Well, you can work full-time for the employer. Why do you want to again work part-time? So you want to work for more than hours? So the point is the co-op period and the co-op employment is assigned by a university or college with the employer. And it is for a full-time role. So yes, you can absolutely do more than these number of hours if you wish to, because it's for a full-time work experience. Employer pays 26.44 and a 700 per month car allowance. For LMIA, do ESDC count car allowance part of the pay? No, they don't. It has to be specifically the amount of money that is being paid to you as wages, not as additional benefits or allowances. Currently working full-time in Toronto, got a full-time permanent job offer from Alberta, but now I'm confused because Alberta has paused its PNP program. Actually, they haven't paused its PNP programs. They are redrafting, or they are revisiting, or they are reworking on their PNP programs, which should be announced by the end of September. So they are going the way of the expression of interest system, whereby you will be able to create your profile, create your account. You will get points for different factors, depending on all the factors that Alberta will decide. You will get points, and then they will conduct draws just like everybody else is conducting draws. And if you get invited, then you will be able to submit your application. That's how you will be going about it. Yeah, I currently working full-time in Toronto, gotten full-time. Yeah, so that's what you can do. Otherwise, if you are in Toronto, then please look for an employer in Ontario and see if anybody can support you in Ontario for your work in Ontario. And maybe that could be a possibility to look at. Received ITA, completed and submitted profile, but got job promotion in the same company after I submitted. Do I need to update IRCC? No, you don't need to update IRCC, but congratulations on your promotion. That's always so awesome, right? Working with one of the top bank in tier 1 job for the last 3 years, work permit expiring in October. How to extend work permit? No PNP or LMIA. You can't. Unfortunately, there is no provision. There is no way to extend your work permit unless your employer is willing to support you. So no, there is no option, unfortunately. If you get invited, you can apply for bridge open work permit. If not, then your employer has to provide you with an LMIA in your case. Otherwise, I mean, if you're married, then your spouse can study masters and then you can apply for an open work permit. But these are pretty much the options. I had 2 titles during my job, but they were under the same knock. When creating express entry profile, can I just create one entry using my last title? Yes, you can do that, but please make sure that your employment letter includes both the titles and says that during the entire tenure he performed the same duties and responsibilities. That way it just clears you from all kinds of issues if at all they were to happen. I'm a student in OINP eligible university and I'm working part-time for BC employer. Should I move to BC after study or stay in Ontario after my PR? I am not sure what you're asking me at all. Should I, if you will stay till my PR, so the point is, who is giving you the nomination? If Ontario is giving you the nomination, of course, stay in Ontario. If BC is giving you the nomination, then stay in BC. That's how you would identify where you should stay. Because if you try to hop skip between the 2 provinces when the other provinces is giving you the nomination, then you are creating a problem for yourself, because then, yeah, you can be questioned by the province as well as by IRCC as to what your real intention is and which province. And if they find out that you don't want to really live in the province who is nominating you, then you might lose your application. I applied for my postgraduate work permit, haven't received my work authorization letter yet. Can I start working? Yes, you can. If you have submitted your application for postgraduate work permit, then you can start working, no problem. Currently in Canada, open work permit, looking for full time, but I got a remote job and my employer is from India. Can I work from here? Will that count as foreign work experience? No, it won't. At least that's what IRCC has defined as foreign work experience on their website under the ministerial instructions under the foreign work. I think section 23 or 25. It says foreign work experience is work experience gained outside Canada. So there you go. Unfortunately, you might not be able to, because you see, when you are creating your work history, you will write employer name and then it will say the country, and the country, if you say India but you are not in India, you are in Canada, right? So that it contradicts. And if you will say Canada, then it asks you for your work permit status and it counts it as Canadian work experience, which is it is not. So therefore, no, it doesn't. So I know where the complexity is and I know where the understanding is, but it's a very big gray area that IRCC has created, never clarified. And as far as the law or as far as the technicality of the book is concerned, it doesn't count. Nothing here, nothing here. Okay. My wife is in India waiting for SOWP. If she gets it, she will be traveling to Canada. Meanwhile, if we get a PR invite, she will apply for PCC in India. Will her PCC become invalid if she travels to Canada? It all depends what you show her country of residence. If you will then show her country of residence as Canada and then the PCC was applied while she was in India, then yes, it's invalid. So if you show her country of residence as India and her PCC is from India and it is valid for 6 months, then that is valid for 6 months. I hope that helps. I've already applied for a low wage LMIA in April. I've already applied for a closed work permit as I am on implied status. Will they refuse my application after 26th of September? Well, I'm hoping not, because the changes come into effect from the 26th of September. But I can't tell you how they will be deciding upon these applications, because it is quite clear that they would become very strict with all the applications as far as LMIAs are concerned. So the logic says that only applications that are being submitted after 26th of September would have the new rules in place. So fingers crossed. I hope you get your approval. How long does it take to receive biometric request after receiving AOR for express entry on August 7th? Approximately 2 months. Will EE stop soon as minister? Will STEM continue? No, I don't think express entry is going to stop anytime soon. And will STEM continue? Well, as far as the categories are concerned, I do not see any reason why they will stop anytime soon. So in my opinion, yes, they will continue. I don't have any pay stubs for India work experience of 2 years in my bank statement with the salary deposit enough, or will I need pay stubs? So you just need to prove that you were paid. So even if you have bank statements that show salary credit, then that is equally acceptable and fine, and there is no problem with that. To clarify, I meant PR confirmation portal email. I'm not sure what we are talking about now. Well, if you have received a PR confirmation portal email, then please respond to IRCC, and once you have responded to them, then they will send you the portal access. Once you have received the portal access, you will upload your photograph and you will confirm you're inside Canada, and a few days later they will send you your COPR. But I'm sorry, I'm not sure what we are referring to here. Sorry about that. Can I submit OINP skill trade from outside of Canada, currently in India, on extended leave from the job? Well, technically, yes, you can. You should be able to complete your application, because the requirement there is not about being in. Actually, there might be a requirement of being inside Canada. I have to see. OINP skilled trade. Work experience requirement is there. Full-time work experience is there. No, don't see anything about. There is. You must be living in Ontario. That is the requirement. Wow. Okay. Where is it? There it says. Oh, no, not this. Where did it go? Present, stop screen, present, share screen, Ontario skill trade. Instead of asking me this question, you could simply just check the Ontario website and you will see current residence in Ontario and legal status in Canada. That is your queue here. It says you must be living in Ontario and hold a valid work permit at the time you apply. There you go. That's your queue. That's the Ontario's express entry skill trade stream. So you could have very easily looked that up and you would have found the answer. There you go. Abhishek says, employer is ready to endorse me to work from New Brunswick. Can I move to New Brunswick and apply for PR under AIP and return back to Ontario once getting a PR? Oh, not a good idea. So you see, whenever you are being supported by a province, then the idea is that the province wants you to live there. What you are asking me is, can I abuse the system? You're asking me, can I manipulate the system? Don't do that. Why? What happens is that it makes it more difficult for everybody else. Plus, not only that, you will be submitting documentation to express your intention, where actually you are then misrepresenting your intention to reside in that province. Plus, such kind of instances makes it very difficult for everybody else who follows, because then the province doesn't believe or trust anybody else or in a similar way. So don't do that. If you're using the province, then please at least give that province what you are expressing, right? The province is giving you the nomination because the province believes that you are being truthful when you are saying you want to live in that province. Otherwise, the province has no reason to give you the nomination. Okay. So if you're choosing New Brunswick and you're applying for PR through New Brunswick, then please try to settle your life in New Brunswick. I'm not saying stay there for your whole life, but at least give it a fair shot. I have a Canadian master's. My primary knock code is pre-masters. Guys, don't do super chats, please. Thank you. Yeah, we are at the end of the line here. So I have a Canadian master's. My primary knock is pre-masters. In the portion which asks when I became eligible for it, I added the date of undergrad date. Should I add my undergrad degree? Don't have ECA. No, it's absolutely fine. You see, that question, which date did you become eligible, is actually meant for federal skilled trade category, because it is part of the eligibility question for the federal skilled trade category. But because the system is the same for all streams, therefore that question happens. So you can write the day you started working, the day you completed your high school, the day you completed your bachelor's degree, your master's. It doesn't matter. You don't need to provide a documentation to support it or to prove it. You just mention it and that's good enough. Don't worry about it. Is it okay to apply alone with inland spouse and kid and later sponsor them? 487 waiting for STEM. Yes, it's absolutely fine. You will have to briefly explain why your spouse is unaccompanying. As long as you provide that information, that's not a problem at all. You can, once you become a permanent resident, you can always sponsor your spouse at a later date. I didn't include my freelance experience in closed work permit, unaware I could due to different project sizes. But again, it's not the way to look at it. They were asking you what explain all your work experiences and disclose all your work experiences. So there was no, anyways, you can now still give it. Now, how should I explain it? For the same reason what you have just mentioned it over here, that it was not included earlier. Or simply don't explain it, just continue with it. If IRCC asks you, then explain it. Otherwise, just continue with it. Okay, because when you are explaining it, then you're drawing their attention to it, which you don't want to draw, and that's what you're trying to do. And if at all they do ask you at a later date, then be prepared with all the supporting evidence as to why didn't you disclose it earlier. That's how you go about it. My employer applied for LMIA on 1st of May. No update yet. Of course, no update, because the processing time is now 8 months approximately. So yeah, it will take time. LMIA applications are taking a lot of time right now. How do I choose on which pathway should I apply? Any suggestions? I belong to software industry. Well, first look at Express Entry, check your scores to see if your scores can be high enough to get invited, whether through OINB or Ontario Tech Draw or through Express Entry. If not, then look at other provincial nominee programs and see if you're eligible in any of those programs. You might also need the support of the employer for most of the BNP programs. That's how you would go about choosing. But start with Express Entry first, always. Currently a student in BC, when should we stop working? The day we get final grades or the day we get a completion letter? Whichever comes first. So when you get your final grades, that is the day you have completed your studies, or the day you get your completion letter. Either of the two, whichever comes first, the day you receive it, that's the day you stop studying it, and you will start working the day you apply for your work permit. Right. That was it. That was for today, right? How amazing was that? Thank you so much for joining in. You guys are awesome. Once again, I am forever hopeful. Send out the positive vibes out there so that you can also, gain some positivity from there. I know how difficult it is looking, and I know it will continue to look difficult, but that's how this whole thing has been rolling for some time now. For everybody out there who is struggling with their work permit decisions, please know that Canada is not the end game. It's not the end of the line. I'm sure there are better things out there. So please, just I know how depressing, how stressful, how anxious you might be with this whole thing that is happening right now. I know a lot of you got sold into the dream, which actually is not running its full course. And I absolutely empathize with that. But the thing is that this is what life is all about. It doesn't always translate into what you want from it, but how it plays out and how you then correct yourself, how you course correct, and then you play the game the way the game has to be played. I wish you guys all the very best. Take care, be good, and I shall see you next time. Until such time, stay forever hopeful.